Welcome to the coolest stuff on the planet.
Welcome to the coolest stuff on the planet. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Catherine.
And Catherine, today we are going to one of the coolest cities on the planet. Can you guess where?
I'm going to take a stab at it and say New York.
You're right.
As usual.
Yes. New York is absolutely one of my favorite cities, and but it's so huge, and we just couldn't devote one podcast to New York. So we're going to focus on one place in New York, and that is going to be Central Park.
Oh, beautiful.
And did you know that about 38 million people visit Central Park every year?
That's a lot.
That's just insane. But you know, Central Park is rich with history, just about as rich with history as the city itself. So back in the mid-1800s, the population of Manhattan was only about 500,000. But it was still really crowded because the city was focused in just a very small part of what we know today as Manhattan. And the people were just desperate for a large public park. So the Evening Post editor at the time, who was William Cullen Bryant, and a famous landscape gardener, Andrew Jackson Downing, pressed the officials to set aside the land before the population exploded. And luckily they did, and that's what we know today as Central Park.
Yeah, that's that piece of land located from 59th to 106th Street and between 5th and 8th Avenue.
Yep.
And they paid about $5 million for it, which was a lot of money back then, I'm sure.
Doesn't go very far in New York today, though.
No, not at all. And they held a competition to decide who would design the park. And Frederick Law Olmsted, who is very famous for designing a number of other parks as well.
Right here in Atlanta, he designed Grant Park.
Exactly, and he also did Prospect Park in Brooklyn. And a British architect named Calvert Vaux, they won this competition. And one thing I thought was interesting was they deliberately designed it so that you couldn't hear the traffic while you were in the park, which, you know, whatever the traffic was like then, it's 10 times worse now.
At least 10 times worse.
Yes.
So let's fast forward about 150 years to today, and the Central Park is probably in the best shape it's ever been, despite many, many hiccups along the way.
Yes.
So we wanted to just focus this podcast on some of the things you can do if you have a chance to spend the day or 2 or 10 days devoting some time to the park, because there's just tons of things you can do in the park.
There sure are. The park is 843 acres big, so you're going to need some time to see it all. And there are tons of sculptures and monuments scattered throughout the park. One that kids really love is the Alice in Wonderland sculpture. And you were telling me you took your niece there.
Yeah, it's massive. They can climb all over it. It's really cool.
Yeah, and there are parts that are actually even worn smooth because of so many hands all over it.
And climbing on it,
yeah. And climbing on it. And adults will really love Strawberry Fields, which is this garden that's a memorial to John Lennon, considered a quiet zone within Central Park. It's got this black and white mosaic, and it's got plants donated by each of the 161 nations that were in existence at the time that it was designed in 1985.
Yeah, and it's considered a peace garden, which is really fitting to a tribute to John Lennon because he was so much about peace.
Yes, of course. Music as well, but he was known for peace.
Yes. And there's also something called the obelisk, Catherine, and it's also known as Cleopatra's Needle. And it's a 71-foot granite antiquity that was commissioned in 1500 BC by an Egyptian pharaoh. And it was moved from Egypt to the park in 1881. And apparently it was sold by the Egyptian Khedive at the time because he wanted the money to help modernize Egypt. So you can check that out in Central Park too.
Yeah, they probably had a whole bunch of obelisks there. And
I'm sure they did, yes. They had one to spare.
One to spare, which was good.
Yes.
And for some of the finest views of Central Park, you want to visit Belvedere Castle, which was also created by Calvert Vaux in 1869, and it's one of the park's many lookouts. And the National Weather Service records temperatures from there.
That's cool. So any temperature you hear about New York City is being recorded right there in the castle.
Yeah.
And one of the park's most popular attractions is the carousel. And, you know, the kids love it, adults love it. About 500,000 people ride the carousel every year. And you've probably seen it on TV, a Law and Order episode.
I'm sure I have, yeah.
You've probably seen it on the big screen. It's been in movies like Serendipity, Hair, When Harry Met Sally. So if you haven't seen it in person, chances are you've seen it on TV or a movie.
And Central Park Zoo is another one of the park's favorite spots. It's very state-of-the-art, and they've also got a children's zoo where you can pet the goats, the sheep, the cows, the pot-bellied pig. So that's one of the places that kids really love to visit when they go there.
Of course, anyone loves a zoo. So. And obviously Central Park is the place where everyone in New York goes just to chill out, and there are tons of off the beaten path spots where you can go to just get away, enjoy nature, have a picnic. But you know, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the 55-acre Great Lawn. This was originally the site of one of the massive reservoirs in the park, but it was drained back in 1931, and now it's what we know as the Great Lawn.
And that's the one you always see when you see pictures of Central Park and everyone's lying on the grass and just chilling and enjoying the sun. That's
exactly.
That's where they're
and
showing.
It has baseball fields now, and it's actually where they've held many of the really famous Central Park concerts, including Simon and Garfunkel, Diana Ross. The Metropolitan Opera plays there, the New York Philharmonic, so it's very, very famous part of Central Park.
Wow, sounds great. Well, we hope you've enjoyed our visit to Central Park, and of course we're going to post a lot more about this on our blog.
Of course, and you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and you can find out the addresses for all of those at the end of the podcast.
And we'll see you next time on the coolest stuff on the planet.
For more on this and thousands of other topics, visit HowStuffWorks.com. Don't forget to check out our other podcasts, free on iTunes.